Hi, welcome to board.com presentation on understanding SAP objects. To understand SAP objects, first of all we need to understand the structure of the enterprise. Enterprise may consist many different departments, maybe engineering, manufacturing, quality, procurement and many more departments. Now, how do they run the business? What kind of IT systems would they have to manage this entire business? Maybe sometimes there would be one enterprise application managing everything, or they may have multiple applications connected to each other. That's also a possibility. And typically, when we say enterprise solution or an application, it would have three tiers. The main one is web server. That's where all the code this particular solution provider would have written, and that is sitting on the web server. And then we have the database server. That's where the metadata would go and sit back and forth. The data would be fetched from that server. And the last one is the client, where there would be either a thick client. Thick client means a piece of software would be installed on the client through which the data would be fetched or data would be fed. Or it can be even thin client, wherein they would use the browser to do the same. So typically when we say enterprise solution, it would have three tiers. It's usually called client tier, web tier and database tier. Now let's look at the object types that are meant for defining the product or the product definition. The first one, see, in the market there are many different applications meant for managing the enterprise. If we take SAP has a object type called material master. In other solutions or softwares it would be called as part master or item master, or they would just say part or item, but it's all the same. Basically it is a master data for the item or the part that company would either manufacture or procure or produce or whatever. Now when we say material master would typically contain the part code or the item code with its description, and if needed probably there would be some size definition or what is the unit of measure and how it is identified internally in the company. So there would be all of this information would be there in the part master or the material master. Please note SAP calls it as material master. And then comes the bill of material, which you all would know. Basically it is statement of the items that will go in making a product. So that is what is bill of material. And when we say bill of material, you would have heard of different terms of bill of material. Maybe it would be somewhere called as E-bomb, somewhere it is M-bomb, or even there are many more different forms of the bomb. So basically these are all the bill of materials. But when the bomb is in engineering department, when they develop and design the product and release the product information, that particular bill of material which they release is engineering bomb. And then comes the manufacturing bomb. Once they do the production planning, there would be many changes that would happen based on the manufacturing criteria, and the bomb which comes out after the production planning is M bomb. Similarly there would be different forms, like there would be sales bomb, or there would be even the costing bomb, and many more different types would be there. Then comes another object type called document info record. The purpose of this object is to hold the files or the originals. It can hold any type of file meant for the business. And then comes the work center. Work center is a location, or even it can be a machine, where some productive activity needed for producing the products would take place. So typically every asset what company wants to manage in their SAP system, they would create all of them as work centers. Maybe it would be machines, or it would be computers, it would be assembly stations, maybe jigs and fixtures. All of these can be treated in SAP system or represented in SAP system as work center. Then comes the routing. If we take simple example of PCB manufacturing process, the production of the PCB would go through many operations, maybe cutting the board, drilling, etching, or maybe lamination, or then probably it may go through drying the film, or maybe soldering, then again drilling, and many more operations it would go through. Now this whole process, how do you represent in SAP system? Because finally this product will have to be manufactured at the shop floor. Now if you have to give the right instructions to the shop floor to produce this, it has to have the details of which work center, what operation has to be done. So it will be sequence of operations carried out at different work centers to produce the product. So this is what is called as routing. And let's look at the enterprise structure. If you have to represent the enterprise structure in SAP, what are these terms called in SAP? Let us try to understand. See, the topmost body, we usually call it as enterprise, which is usually called as client. And below the enterprise there would be many different companies, or it can be subsidiaries. And then comes below that, there can be under a company there can be factory, and below the factory there would be many warehouses where they would stock the items, maybe raw material or semi-finished or finished products that would be there. And to sell the product what the enterprise manufactures, there would be sales organization to basically sell the products what the company produces. And please note, in SAP all these are represented this way. Enterprise stands for client, we usually call it by the term client, and company and subsidiaries would be called as company code. Factory is called as plant, and sales organization is going to be called with the same term. And below that, if there are any other business areas, divisions and all, it would be called as division. And warehouses are usually called as storage locations in SAP. And let's look at understanding the classification of objects. See, when we are having a business solution like SAP, and different departments are using this system to manage their part of work, they would be having many different types of objects. Some of the examples we saw earlier. Now how do you classify these objects? What is importance of classification for the quick search, and also even for reuse and keeping the data organized? You can classify the objects based on the parameter that you want to classify. Let's try to take example of an engine manufacturing company. Now this engine manufacturer wants to classify each and every engine that they design and produce. And every engine, let's say they would have different models, maybe based on the requirement what they get from customers, they would be designing these engines and manufacturing and supplying. Now every engine, how can you classify? Maybe based on the fuel type it is using, maybe diesel, petrol, CNG. So this is one way of categorizing, or you can say one parameter based on which you can categorize. Another parameter would be the cooling type, maybe liquid cooled or air cooled. This is another parameter you would be defining. And also it can be based on the displacement, maybe 1000 cc engine or 1200cc engine. So all these are the parameters based on which you may want to classify the engines which your company is manufacturing. So this is the possibility of SAP, that you can classify the objects. And it's time for demo. Now let's look at all the object types that we have discussed now, how to create them on SAP. So let's start.